All right, let's get started. So this week we're talking about shape. However, before we get started on that, let's talk about what's due. We've got the icon local project is due this week. Make sure to check out where did it go? So make sure to check out this on this assignment. This is a cool video that you should watch talking about logos, which is a great piece that will help you hopefully think differently about logos. So let's get back to the presentation, but get that stuff turned in. So here we go. Back to, so these are the learning objectives. We're going to define what is shape, the types of shapes. We've got biomorphic, non-object, objective, curvilinear, and rectilinear. Just some helping you get some more vocabulary towards understanding this, understanding design and what we are going to do with how we can discuss these things and what we're going to do with the next thing in design. So always fun. Got shape, and we've got a new shape there. So it's just the area that we're looking at. So you can also call it form. You can call it but shape is more specific than form, and so we can so here we've got the figure, and then the ground is the space between the elements. So perception, so we look at these things and the shapes convey to us information about what we're looking at. So if we're going to talk about apples, this is these are the shapes that represent what we see as apples. If we wanted to talk about bananas, this is not the shape that we would draw. So they help us understand what the subject is depending on the shape. So there's the two-dimensional design that shows the space between the objects, color, and the texture. But with this, the shapes also can help us see like the three-dimensional part of shapes. So even though everything we're looking at is in 2 dimensions, it gives us the illusion of 3 dimensionals, which the volume and mass have to do with the 3-dimensional objects. And so the flat art has to be observed from the front, where a 3-dimensional can be observed from any angle. So this is the interesting concept here. So it looks like a 2-dimensional shape, but as we pull back and as we see the perspective change, we've got all of this garbage that turns into So it's garbage from one perspective. And then from this other perspective, we have a picture of, I'm going to say a soldier. So just interesting concept here of obviously the different perspective changes our view of the art in this one. I think this is funny, but is a conspiracy between the light source and the image. So it's interesting to look at this. We've got all these different objects. It really does matter about our perspective. So there's naturalism, which is gives true to life visual appearances, and idealism is the way we think things ought to be. So this is a good example of it here. We've got the self-portrait, which is the natural, and then we have the idealism here with Polycletus, the spear bearer. Not too many men, I don't think back then or even today look this good. So then we move into so we do different things in art to change the proportion. So here with Bill Clinton, we've got him on a skate and his head way bigger than it should be, but that doesn't seem to deter us from knowing who they're talking about. And then it's probably some political cartoon. There may have been an article about that. But then over on the right, here we've got an abstraction, but as soon as we look at this without you, and maybe if you're watching this on the screen, you can't even read it, but we all know that that's from, if you've seen the movie Pulp Fiction, it's easy to identify what that art is trying to represent. So abstraction just can make things more simple, and it gets rid of some of the detail that came from the original part in what's in real life. Here, on the left, it looks like a boat and the moon, the reflection in the water. However, the shapes aren't realistic. And then over on the right, we've just got, it's basically a face, and obviously could be a mask, but this is just an abstraction of what reality is. So, and then obviously the abstraction can vary. And if we take away things, they call that reductive, and abstraction has been used for centuries. So we take a look at the shape and then read our interpretation into that shape. So if we look at this, this interesting because we look at this and we see shapes from living things in this. It could be a person, it could be an animal, it could be a teapot. So, but here we're abstracting and we can still see elements of the real world in the real world shapes in here. I'm looking, this could be a duck upside down. So here we have on the right, we have a picture with realistic shapes, and over on the left, we've got other things that just represent, once again, more abstraction from what reality is, but we still see these biomorphic forms to help us better understand what the artist is trying to portray. So here's where we've just got shapes that don't have any reference to any subject matter, it's just the shapes. And we can create our own story if we want to about these shapes, what they're doing, whether it's a city or people sitting at desks in a classroom. We can come up with whatever we want on this. Here's some more abstract art where these shapes, we can read our own interpretation of what these shapes are or mean. Of course, the artist can title it whatever they want, and then we have to find. But there may not even be a subject, it's just maybe these shapes. We're trying to evoke some kind of emotion or movement or. So here's continuous curvilinear is just shows like cars and talking about characters. Here's rectilinear, where we've just got the shape of a building. So man-made or manufactured things. Here's curvilinear and rectangular shapes put into the same piece of art or composition, or with the building. Interesting how it looks like the building's broken, but obviously it was built that way. So we've got positive shapes, which is the figure, and the negative shapes, which is the ground. But sometimes these are, we confuse these things. And well, and I say we confuse these things, we may not be sure what the positive and negative mean in this. So the integration between the different shapes, and you can see here the difference between here and here, where this looks more uniform to us than these shapes out there. And then here we've got the isolation or integration. So we've got different shapes in here, but these weave together to create the subject people. So here we've got the positive and negative where they're playing against each other to create the shapes. So here's where we're talking about ambiguity between figure and ground, where we've created this where we can see the man with the hat, the man on the right, and then the woman with in between. Just put the shapes in the right places and change your focus. And this is a creative art piece here that all blends together. Got the negative and the positive and the ground interact, so we see different things. Interesting how we've created the shapes here with the moon, face of the moon, a person asleep. We've got the car and the dog here. And I think this is clever. Someone should actually make these mugs. So we've got the person with the message symbol above them. That's a creative. For ambiguity with figure and ground, here's another good one. Got Sherlock Holmes and the pipe here. So that's it for this week. Look forward to seeing your icon projects, and then we will be doing the critiques next week.